All right, today I'm going to talk about how God brought me out of homosexuality and how I got into it too, how the devil lured me into that and really messed with my identity. Um, and from the top, I want to say that nobody's born homosexual. Nobody's born, you know, without trauma and sin. We come of age and then get attracted and then get married and all that stuff. But we're not born with a sexual identity. We're all born man to be with woman, woman to be with man. I'm going to talk about what the Bible has to say in another video. In fact, I might just dedicate the next few videos to one specifically talking about what the Bible has to say and that there is freedom. And I want to give clarity because I know that we live in the end times when we have a lot of false churches that preach that it's okay, come to church and stay bound. Come to church and we're going to make you comfortable in your sin. And Jesus didn't die on the cross and rise again to leave me bound. So I'll make a video making that clear. And several videos because I know that God, the heart of the Father, is to set the captives free. And in my own story, I sought freedom. You know, right out of high school, I went into Bible school to be a minister. And I'll talk about that more separately. That was a lot of years ago. And I remember searching for answers, and nobody was even sent from then all the way until several years ago. Just searching, crying out to multiple pastors, preachers, teachers, people that aren't of God, people in the world, just looking for answers. And I never wanted to make myself comfortable in my sin. If that is what I wanted to do, I would have accepted the answers and just stayed on with that life. But I knew that that wasn't true. I think, I was searching for truth, no matter how painful, no matter how much the truth looked me in the face and said, we got to make some changes, buddy. So nobody's born gay. I know a lot of people believe that. A lot of people I've known have believed that. And we're not born with a sexual confusion or a sexual identity. We're born for man to be with woman, woman to be with man at the right age, at the appointed time. Now, when this goes astray is a lot of times when there's trauma involved. Someone can be molested or be around molestation, and that can confuse and pervert and awaken something that shouldn't be awakened. And the devil will use that. So, there's other things where people might get involved because of watching porn. There might have not been any trauma involved, but they open their door to pornography, and then that opens up a whole nother can of worms. So again, I'll do another separate talk about the dangers of pornography and how we all need to stay away from it, because that's a heavy, heavy issue and a heavy, heavy topic. Now, for my own story, I'm a product of divorce. My parents divorced when I was at a pretty young age, and we were living in Germany at the time. My dad was in the army, so we're living on an army base, and there was adultery and abuse, and again, this is hopefully the last time I say this. Is I want to do another separate video about, especially for people that know my family and me that would watch this. I'll do a separate video about my dad and the redemption story that's been there, and the forgiveness and God giving me understanding. My dad was a product of generational curses, and he did much better than his father. And even after his mistakes in his 20s, 30s, and 40s, went on to really redeem a lot of what he did. And so I love my dad. I've forgiven him completely. All things are possible with God, and God has done such a beautiful redemption story with my dad, who I honor and I love and I respect and I look up to in a lot of ways. So separate video, but I do want to make that clear in this because I'm going to say some stuff about my family that's a little bit painful, but people need to know that there's been a redemption story. And there's no judgment that needs to go to my family or to my father. I honor him. I love him. I respect him. I'm grateful for him. And so anyway, I'm a product of divorce, and I have one older brother and two sisters. So my mom moves with the four kids from Germany back to the United States to Rockford, where she grew up and her family was from. So we moved back to the States, and my dad stays in Germany to finish his term in the service. He, in the Army, you can't just get up and leave because your wife's leaving you. And she left him rightly so because of adultery, abuse, and talk about that more some other time. But bear with me. There's going to be some pauses. I'm definitely getting cotton mouth talking about this, So we get back to the States. My brother's already a teenager at the time. So within a short amount of time, he goes on to do his own thing, gets married pretty young. And I grow up predominantly at a really young age, like 7, 8, 9, with just my mom and the girls, my two sisters. I got an older sister and a little sister. And so I'm growing up with the girls, a product of divorce. And because of a lot of things, there's a lot of bitterness towards my father. A lot of like, how could you let this happen in my family? How could you harm the people that you love? And again, there's grace and redemption for that. So no disrespect to anybody in my family. Zero. Like, they're the best people I have. I love them. Nothing but love for them. So, but there's been some hard stuff. So product of divorce, growing up around girls, and had this bitterness towards my father, this feeling of like, I want nothing. I don't want to be anything like him. That's how I felt a long time as a kid, and even in my 20s, is that I don't want to be, if that's what someone that could hurt their own family does, I don't want to be like him. So he's a strong, macho military man. I don't want to be that. He's looking at women all the time lustfully. Okay, I'm not going to look at women like that at all. I just shut that down before I even had a same-sex thought ever in my life. I was like, I'm just going to have this, I'm never going to look at women like that. And, but still, growing up, had a desire to be a dad and have a wife and be what my dad wasn't able to be in his youth towards my family. And I still have that dream to be a great father. I don't know the future. I don't know how many years we have, honestly, and it's not what I'm doing. I'm not married. I'm not even dating. God's got me focused on some very specific stuff right now. So God's will be done. I'll just leave it at that. But I just want to point out these things about there was trauma and growing up around abuse and abused in some ways, and other siblings abused in different ways. And timid and military family, you're moving from city to city and country to country and state to state every couple of years. So even from a young age, I got used to, I don't know if I want to make really strong friends because we might move in a few years. So I kind of was a loner even from a young age, which there's benefits to that, developmental benefits, but there's also some weaknesses in that. And so didn't want to go do sports and anything that might be macho, and that's okay. God developed an artist in me. Like, to this day, I'm the artist. I'm more sportsy than more athletic than I thought I would ever be, honestly. Like, it's remarkable how some stuff's developed in my life. But by nature, honestly, just more of an artist, and into artsy things. I like that kind of stuff. So, regardless of trauma, that was something that needed to happen in my life. That's part of the design of God for me. So, but there was this, you could see there's a setup of, okay, he doesn't want to be like his father figure. The father's not in the home. He's only around women. There may be some timidity, mannerism-wise, there may be some femininity because I didn't even have men to look at. My brother, again, moved out as I was really young, so I didn't even have my older brother to kind of mimic anything off of. So, I didn't have my first sexual thought until 7th grade. I think I realized that something could happen down there around 6th grade. I'm like, oh, it does these other things. But 7th grade started getting curious about fitness. And then really quickly, around 7th, 8th grade, I'm getting teased because I'm timid. I'm a loner. I'm not fitting the mold of, typical. I didn't fit into any group. I think I fit into the choir group, and even then I was like, I'm still kind of my own dude. But in all this time, I got saved at 5 years old. I remember going to my mom and being like, I want to pray to meet Jesus. And she prays with me. And so I've known the Lord from a really young age, but there's been a whole journey that happened in there, and falling away and coming back, and confusion and darkness and all that stuff. So bear with me. I want to make sure. There's stuff that I'm like, I want to say this, but did I already say it? I don't know. This may not be perfect. But anyway, around 7th grade, start getting interested in fitness. And then really quick, that turned into, okay, I don't have a desire for women. I've told myself I don't want to be like anyone that wants women on some level. And start looking at fitness magazines. And really quickly, that becomes, rather than admiring men's bodies, to be like, yeah, I want to have a body like that, which that's part of it. But it perverted and went beyond that to, I like that. I want to be with that. Oh, that's appealing to me. And I wasn't even open to being curious about other things because of my family story. So this whole time, I'm like going to church, praying I get filled with the Holy Spirit when I'm 14 years old, but there's this underlying thing, and just, it was a huge gap in my life. So anyway, I'm going to speed up a few years. I get after high school, and by the grace of God, I end up going to a private Christian high school, and a few teachers help support that, and then eventually my family's able to pay for part of it. And so I'm going to this Christian high school at a mega church in my hometown. And just right after high school, I'm like, man, what do I want to do? I really just want to serve God. I want to love people. I love music. So I go to Bible school there to intern in the music department, which part of it you would also get Bible school credentials. So I'm interning in the music department, seeking God. Had a radical event between the internship at the church and high school, which it was June 17th of a certain year. And then, a few months later, I'm in Bible school. But I just was on fire for God, and I'm like, man, I've had some things happen in my life, but I want to serve God. Okay, let me backtrack a few years, actually. So around 10th grade, 9th or 10th grade, I developed like end of 11th grade, 12th grade, even into my I looked really young, still kind of have a baby face, but around 10th or 11th grade, I didn't even look my age. I was definitely a kid. I looked like a child. And I was at a YMCA locker room and going into the sauna, I was like, this is cool. I just want to, go be in the sauna. And I got molested in that sauna, and by an older man. I think he was in his 30s, and it turned out that the man was a guy that went to my church, biggest church in my hometown. I think to this day it probably still is the biggest church, but I get molested by this guy, and it took any of this desire, from 7th grade up, I had seen porn, I had sinned with porn, and already had my mind starting to be lots of confusion coming in, lots of attacks on my identity in Christ, and just my identity. But I get molested, and this guy touches me. He touches my privates, and I became aroused. And I want to be a little careful here, but from the YMCA to where we lived, my family lived at the time, it's like a little 1 mile walk, and I stop in a cemetery, which was halfway through. It was just somewhere private to stop, and this guy, because I'm aroused, I'm like trying to figure out how to leave, and I'm just paralyzed when he touches me. I'm like, I can't move. I literally am like in such fear. I'm like, oh my God. And what's happening? But it caused me to get stimulated, which that's what happens when you touch those body parts. So I go to this, I'm like, I gotta go shower real quick. I'll be back. Cause I knew the guy wanted to do stuff. But I don't even shower. I like practically run naked out of the YMCA. I put on my clothes as fast as can, just like trembling and being like, I got to get out of here. I'm like running and then run out of the YMCA across the highway, which is 251. And I stop in the cemetery, and just in the cemetery, I break down, and man, it still hurts. I break down, and for hours, I didn't expect to get upset. Sorry. For hours, I'm in the cemetery. I gotta tell you guys this video because it's more important to set the captives free than to appear to have it all together. But I'm in this cemetery for hours. Excuse me. And just crying. And I'm 15, 16. I don't know. I got to check the dates. But I'm just sobbing because I feel like something's wrong with me now. Other things I was experimenting and curious. And it was kind of just too much isolated time and too much time alone and getting into things. But this was the event that made me feel like a loser. Because I just wanted to be a husband and be a good dad to some kids one day and love my wife and not cheat on her. But I'm in the cemetery just breaking down, just crying, and it's like death just came over me, and I felt like nothing. And I don't even know that I prayed or had words. I just sobbed for hours, and then I go home once I could pull myself together, and for years, I just keep the secret. I don't tell a soul of what happened to me. And I feel messed up because I got aroused. So I feel like something's wrong with me because my body responded how a body does when it's touched sexually. And anyway, so I'm carrying the secret, and now all of a sudden I've got a whole nother world of problems. I'm not just insecure. I'm not just like worried about being too effeminate because I've only seen women examples in my life and don't want to be like the men that I've seen. Because at that point I'm like, these guys are all jerks. Like, I don't want to be like these people. And, but now I've got this whole other problem because I'm trying to hide this thing. I'm not thinking I was molested. It took me 3 years to be like, you were molested. Like I didn't go in there wanting that. I was molested. So I'm carrying the secret. Don't tell anybody. It takes me I think I was 18 when I first told my mom about this. And she was the first person that told me, the only person actually that said, it's not your fault that your body responded that way. That's what body parts do. That doesn't make you gay. But there had been this 3-year period where I'm just carrying this thing around. And now I'm like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm gay. And I'm already getting called stuff because I don't fit into groups. But now those comments, that bullying became even worse. And it started to get into my head of maybe I am gay. Maybe this is what I am. And I'm just carrying around this darkness. And I don't have time to tell you every detail of the story. I'm just like, what parts do I skip over? Anyway, long story short, I end up doing some other sexual stuff as I get older, like 17, 18. Mostly guys, all guys doing stuff to me. Like I never wanted to please other people, but now I had realized, oh, there's stuff people can do to me that pleases me. So there's a lot of oral happening. Secretly, it was my secret thing. Nobody knew about it. Not one person on the earth knew about it for years. In high school. I mean, it was like this, I think I was 16 because I was working my first job at Beefaroo. And that's when I found ways to secretly, stuff kept happening, and then once you open the door, it gets worse and worse. So I got this secret thing going on in my life. I don't even want to change in the locker room at school anymore because something inside me, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to find out. And what if I notice something? And then the attraction to men develops like full on to where I'm like full on have this burning lust towards men. Anyway, I radically get saved after high school and since I was 12, I'm like, I want to be in ministry, but there's this other thing happening in my life. And, go to an internship and am radical. I'm like, from day till night and night till day, all I wanted to do was work at the church, do missions, do ministry, study. That was my entire life. Well, I'm 18 and a young 18. I mean, my birthday's in April, so the internship that has started later, I'm just like barely getting into 18. The year after high school, and there's a man in his 20s, I think he was 25 or 26, who also interned. He came up from Florida, had already been to college, living his life, to intern in the same Bible program that I was in at the church, the ministry program. And anyway, we're becoming friends. Like, it's a small music department that we're in, and I'm looking up to this guy, and he's telling me a story about how, he had some gay stuff happen, but he loves Jesus. And so I'm just openly sharing all this stuff with him, thinking, man, I got a friend, and maybe this guy's gonna help me. He's old. He's like 7 years older, and but I was just naive and didn't have much protection around myself. There wasn't a lot of wisdom over that situation, and he ended up pursuing me, and it just started with flirtatious comments like, I want to jump on your back, but we're just friends. And I'm like, okay. Like, I never thought about it. I was so naive. But he ends up, my dad goes out of town, and I'm like, hey, come stay at my dad's house with me. I'm in the house alone, like, come hang out. My dad, it's a house, but he's got multiple bedrooms. I have the house to myself. I really don't want to stay there alone, and I just want to hang out with my friend, and he's the cool guy from another state. So, like, in my little kid head, or my little young man head, I just was like, I looked up to him. And so he comes to stay the night, and this is, we're both interning, and I, like, show him the spare room, and I'm going to bed. We got to get up and do ministry the next day and go to our internship. And, he says to me, he's like, I don't want to sleep alone. Like, how are you going to have me over here and like make me sleep alone in this big bed? And I'm just like, okay, I'm not used to having a lot of friends. I mean, I've had a few, but not people staying at my house and stuff. So, I go stay in the bed with him. I mean, he's literally like, I go to sleep in a different room, and he's like, no, come sleep with me. Well, I didn't know he was a predator until that night. I didn't know that he was being my friend because he was trying to fulfill his sexual fantasies with me. So, his name's Tony. I'm not going to say his last name, but Tony was a predator and pursued me. And anyway, he's like, come in the bed. So I'm like, okay, it's a massive king size bed. I go stay in it, and we're sleeping on like opposite ends, and then he's like over here, and then we're just sleeping, and then he's over here, and then boom, in the middle of the night, he starts molesting me. And I guess I was 18, so I don't know, but I didn't expect to wake up with a hand on my personal parts. So, but this time it was a little different because I wasn't paralyzed. This was my friend, and over that night I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. And then I thought that I was in love with him, but that's a little bit of a longer story. I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, Tony, we need to talk to our pastor about this. Like, we need to just talk to him. And he's like, no, this is never going to happen again. Like, don't worry about it. It's a one-time thing. And then he just starts not talking to me. And I'm like, but now I'm like, oh, I've been sexual with a friend. And I start like having romantic feelings towards him. But then a month goes by, and we're on a missions trip in Poland. March 19th of that year. We're sharing a room because we're the two interns. So at the hotel, like we would be in the same room for all the different hotels we stayed at on our missions in Poland. And then again, after he promised me it would never happen again, when I was like, we need to go talk to leadership, he then pursues me again. And so that whole week of our missions trip, at night, in the daytime we're doing missions, at night he's jumping into bed with me. And an older man. I mean, 7 years. The difference between 18 and 25 is pretty drastic. So I think he was around 25, maybe 26. I don't know, but it's a huge shift. He's been out in the world a lot, experiencing tons of things I'd never thought of. And so the same thing happens. We get back to the States, and I'm like, hey, we got to talk to somebody about this. And then we don't. He assures me it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And I'm just like, okay, fine. Like, we'll not confront it. But then this was like all in the same chunk of time. February 19th was the first time. The next time was March 19th through the 26th. All these years later, I remember exactly. And the final time was another month goes by. And I'm thinking, okay, we're cool. Like, this is just something that happened. It's not. He keeps promising me it's not going to happen again, as predators do. And a month later, April 19th, turns out that the guy that leads the ministry is going to go like do some new ministry, and Tony's getting promoted to be the music director now. So my predator is now about to be my leader. And the night of the announcement, it was a Wednesday, April 19th of that year. I think it's all cool. It's a month later. He's like, it's fine, everything's okay. Which obviously it wasn't. But we go to the house that he lived at just to take a nap after we have a long day of doing internship and Bible studies, a couple hours to eat and take a nap before we go back and do, actually it was a Thursday night, not a Wednesday night, a Thursday night choir rehearsal and prayer for the Sunday service coming up. Well, it was at that choir rehearsal that it was going to be announced that Pastor Sammy was leaving to go do his next part in ministry, and Tony was going to be elevated to be the music director. And so it was going to be announced to the choir that night, and then that Sunday they would announce it to the church, and then 2 weeks later, the transition would happen. Well, the very night that he was going to be announced as the minister, the music minister, we go to his house to take a nap and grab dinner, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going with my friend. Well, I go upstairs to take a nap. He's like getting ready, ironing clothes. And then while I'm sleeping, he jumps in bed with me, and he's like whispering behind me, I just can't help myself. And then stuff happens, and I go to that service that night, and I'm watching him get announced, and I'm just sobbing and trembling, and I got up and walked out. Like I'm like, I can't even sit for this. Like, what's happening? And there's a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of years of stuff that happened in there. But anyway, I end up leaving the internship and the ministry, having this huge void in my life, but now I've opened up, now the door of sexuality's been opened up, and I go right into, within months, I'm smoking weed, going to raves, doing ecstasy, trying out everything, because this whole church foundation is gone. I'm not praying and reading my Bible at home. I'm just like, you know what? That stuff messed with me. I'm not doing ministry. But I'm young, and now I'm 19, and just raves and ecstasy and drugs and marijuana and people, and over a series of events and years, end up dating and a guy, moving in with the guy, getting introduced to cocaine, becoming sexualized, going to bars, and then seeing like everyone at the bar is like, oh, you're like the prince of the bar, and like there's good feelings that come of that when you're naive and unprincipled and disciplined, of like, oh, I'm like the king of the bar. And it's weird, but this is something that happened in my life. So there's a time that I enjoyed that, but I was still tortured because I knew that I'm called to God, most importantly, and also called to ministry. But now I'm like living full on with dudes and living this other life. And anyway, there's a lot of stuff that happens in those upcoming years. Bits and pieces of that'll come out in upcoming videos. But I end up becoming addicted to cocaine, marijuana, experimenting with a lot of other drugs. a period comes where I just feel I'm suicidal. Like I'm having demonic thoughts of suicide. Years later, living in Chicago, I'd moved to Chicago, and I remember months of just waking up every day feeling like hearing a voice. I would be going to like apply for jobs on the train and walking in my neighborhood in Wicker Park and just see my reflection in storefront mirrors, windows, and I would just hear this thought, demonic. I mean, it was a demon that was like, kill yourself. You should shoot yourself. And I would imagine like a little black gun. I mean, just suicide came on me, and my life became very dark and a huge mess. All the time I knew that it wasn't God's will that I was gay, but I kept thinking, this is so unfair that I would have a same-sex attraction and something that feels so impossible to overcome. And I know there's some of you that it feels so impossible. It's not impossible. God's even having you watch this video today to let you know it's not impossible. It's hard. It's not fair. It's not impossible. And anyway, long story short, how many times I'm going to say that? But God begins a process with me about 10 years ago of setting me free. And I could have participated, and that all could have happened a lot quicker. But like I would be dating people. I stopped dating people. I was even living with someone in Chicago at one point. And really quickly living together, I'm just like, I don't want to be in gay relationships anymore. This is stupid. And I didn't want to go date a girl. I'm just like, I don't want to date you. So we decided just to stay living together in our one-bedroom apartment with our one bed. Just live together, and we're not going to date, but we're still kind of romantic. But I remember stopping, I'm like, within a month of living together, we lived together for 3 years. I'm like, I'm not going to have sex with you anymore. I couldn't bring myself physically. There was no desire to have sex with him. Even though I desired to do that with other people, I didn't want to do it with him. So I'm living with this guy, not being sexual, but because of fear and many other fear about finances and other stuff, not taking the jump to go live alone. I'm just like, okay, this is cheap. I'm in college at the time. I'm trying to like build up a business teaching piano and voice and guitar. I'm pursuing a career as a musician in Chicago at the time, which all along I just wanted to be a worshiper. But somehow over the years, I'm like, okay, like I'm playing in the blues scene and the gay scene and the pop scene and just a local Chicago musician, playing the local scene. And I mean, a few other things outside of Chicago, but really I was just a city musician. And so I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm like, how am I supposed to be like building this teaching business and music business and going to college and working in restaurants at night enough to like, you know, pay the bills and afford to go live alone? So we just stay living together for years. No sex, but still romantic. We're still sleeping in the same bed. There's still moments of intimacy, but not sexual intimacy. So it was just a long period. And then finally in Chicago in 2016, it had just gotten to the point that me and this person that I was living with, I'm like, we can't even live, like we didn't even like each other as humans at that point. We're both like disgusted to even look at each other. And so finally I move out in July of 2016 and get my own place in Chicago. And I'm not dating. Like I knew enough 7.5 years ago to not be dating anybody. And I mean, I dabbled a little bit, but predominantly I'm like, I don't need to be dating. Like this isn't in my heart. It hasn't been in my heart for years. I don't want to date a dude. It's becoming not even comfortable at this point. I had become a sex addict. I had started secretly having sexual encounters the years before and had full-blown just become addicted to sex. Bathhouses, gym encounters, locker room encounters, online app encounters, full-blown just like driven by sexuality. But somehow reading my Bible and praying and being like, Lord, help me. I'm watching videos and videos and videos. But I had this huge open door to sexuality and still doing drugs and not cocaine, like that's another story, but I was still smoking weed every day and just on this teeter-totter for years after that, 2016, for years of going back and forth of Okay, pursue God, pray, read the Bible. I'm speaking in tongues and like, Lord, help me. But then, oh, having sex, secret sex, sexual addiction. And just, it was so frustrating because it was just this constant teeter-totter of like a few months good and then fall down for a few weeks or a few months and just insane sexual encounters. I mean, like, so much going on. Like, or this is an adult video, please, but, and I'm going to spare a lot of the words, but doing so much stuff. So anyway, 2016, I'm in Chicago. I'm done with Chicago. I got to go. So by 2017, I finally moved to Los Angeles, LA, where I am now. And same thing, like I'm driving through the country, driving through Utah, being like, I think God, like my spirit's being activated, but the flesh is still being fed and I'm in bondage and sin still. But even driving through the country, through Colorado and Utah specifically, I don't know why, but driving through Utah, I was like, man, I think God's going to have revival in Los Angeles. He's going to revive a nation. I'm like having these like downloads from the Lord of like, I'm going to save my people. I'm going to do a great work and I'm going to use you. And now he's going to use a lot of people. You know what I mean? I'm just a dude that he's going to use, but he's going to use a lot of people. So God's like, even moving to California, telling me the stuff he's going to do in my life. But on the way here, I'm like, I'm never going to have sex again with a dude. Like, I'm done with all that. But then I get here, I'm living alone, I'm isolated, I'm thousands of miles away from any accountability, anyone that's ever known me. Full of fantasy, and I start to fulfill those fantasies. 2017, 2018, 2019. And I'm still pursuing going to churches. A lot of the churches were dead, to be honest. Just like celebrity, arrogant pastors that don't operate in the Holy Spirit. They don't operate in humility. But another video. But arrogance is so repulsive at every level. God doesn't like it. I don't like it. Nobody likes it. Who likes it? Nobody. But arrogant people love each other for some reason. Like they can get around each other and be like, aha, yeah, we're all the same. Gross. But I'm in Los Angeles now. I've been here since 2017. And on this teeter-totter still of going to bathhouses and having hookups and encounters, and then months of like pursuing God, and then just hitting walls of like, well, getting frustrated and feeling like I'm alone, man. And it wasn't always just like, oh, I feel alone, lonely, and I want to have intimacy. That would get perverted because I still had the door open to pornography, which is such a dangerous open door to have in our lives, for anybody, not just if you're coming out of homosexuality. But I would have that door open, and then it always demands more. And it would always be within a few weeks or even days or months sometimes that it would go from like my secret bedroom sin to I want the real deal and I know how easy it is to get. So there was years in LA of bondage of I don't know how to get free, and do I need delivered? Is this the flesh? I'll talk more about that in another video because it's really useful. But 2020 comes, COVID lockdowns, and for a year, I just get such freedom. Like, I'm still watching porn here and there, but the places I would go to fulfill fantasies and what perverted desires for intimacy, I couldn't even do it for like a year because everything was closed down. I mean, places weren't even open. And then a lot of places, well, I'll leave that part out, but it wasn't even an option. And I was like, thank you, God. Like something good came out of all this COVID craziness. But I was experiencing the longest amount of freedom I had had in my adult life since having same-sex relationships, because the option wasn't even there and it was so easy. But then in 2021, and I'd started to do an online ministry. I became the worship leader for a guy that was doing ministry out of Colorado. And I was in LA, and we would just get together on video. I knew the guy from like a 7th grade youth group that I was in. And we weren't even friends for years, never even close, but we had just connected during COVID times. And we're making videos, and I'm feeling so, I'm free, and this is time for me to step out as a worship leader, and this is going to be what I do. So he's doing the sermon, and I would come on and do the worship. He would be broadcast from Colorado. I'm broadcast from LA. And several months, this is like the ministry that I do. I go to church, but then I think he did it a couple times a week, but I would be there Thursdays. And that would be like our online church service. So I'm like, all right, man, I'm stepping back into ministry. This is 2021. And then in 2020, I'm getting to the end, guys. What time? How long have we been doing this? Well, we're already longer, but hey, this is going to be one of those stories. So 2021, he comes out to LA to do a live broadcast from LA with me. And we're talking politics, BLM, COVID, Trump, all this stuff. And just while we're talking in LA, I'm like, this guy is so brainwashed. He loves God, he wants to do ministry, but he's so brainwashed politically. And he's for a lot of stuff that my eyes had already opened up. And I'm like, oh, there's a media machine using all this stuff to stir up people and cause division. There's so much lies and propaganda, which we'll talk about that. Maybe not this month, but it's coming. It's a-coming. So anyway, he comes to LA, and just after spending a few days with him, I'm like, okay, I don't think that there's so much that we're different on that I can't be the worship leader for his church anymore. And within a week, I let him know. I'm like, hey, respectfully, I'm feel God's moving me to do my own thing, to do something different. And which I wasn't even sure what that was, but I'm like, okay, this isn't what I was looking for. But I took a chance, and he took a chance on me. I took a chance on him. It's not always bad. Sometimes we're just not equally yoked. And there was so much difference on stuff that I'm like, I know I got to be adamant with where I stand on some certain things, on truth about it. And it's stuff that he just wasn't seeing or willing to see at the time. And I won't even mention his name because lovely guy, right? We're just not compatible to be working together in this way. And anyway, so within about a week, for a few months I'm doing this. And then after he comes to LA and goes back to Colorado, I decide to split ways with him. And so, but then I drop him off at the airport. And after over a year of no sex, of feeling such like victory, thankfully it was easier because of lockdowns. All of a sudden I felt bitter because I'm like, man, I just tried to step out into ministry again, and I just felt exhausted. I'm like, God, I keep trying, and this is not easy. Like, no part of this is easy. And but anyway, I drop him off at the airport, and then something just got in my head of go have sex. So it's April of 2021. I think it's like the end of April. I go to a bathhouse that I find out is open again, and go there. And the thing about sex outside of God's plan is the moment it's over, it's like masturbation. The moment it's over, what? There's no love. There's no intimacy. You just had sex with a stranger or a bunch of strangers or did sexual things. And so I went there, fulfilled this desire that's like, yeah, this devilish voice in my head that's like, yeah, ministry's not working out. Go have sex. Fulfill your lust. I do that, and then that opens up a whole series of months. I mean, it was like April, May, June, July, August, September. 6 months, 5 or 6 months of once I had opened that door again, even though I love God, but I'm being disobedient. So, but I suddenly, once the door was open, that driving force of sexuality was back. And I'm like, oh, now that things are open, like what was the last year of freedom about? I'm just like all of a sudden doing it again. And then there's thoughts of like, well, I've already opened the door. I might as well just like go on a sex bender while I've already opened the door. I might as well just do it. Like all these lies, right? But I'm doing that, living in sin, would have went to hell, living in sin. And, but then September of 2021, finally at the end, I'm just broken. And I'm like, God, I don't know what's wrong with the church in LA. I don't know how to find the right place. One person knows what to do politically. They know to keep their church open during lockdowns, but the Holy Spirit's not there. Another one, the Holy Spirit's there, but they have no idea that the country's under some stuff's going on. I just felt devastated. So September 2021, finally I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to church. So I make my move back towards God, and I have not handled the years perfectly since then, but I start going to church and I become adamant about I'm going after God. And, you know, having a heart for revival, and I'm going to figure out what God wants for me, and I'm going to walk in it, and I'm going to overcome this thing. And there's more to the story after that about how, you know, sometimes we're seeking deliverance and God's saying, stop watching pornography, close the door. You know, if you go 10 years totally free of a same-sex desire, but then you're like, I'm good, I'll just watch one little porn video. Well, now you've opened the door, and that beast may come crawling back in. So we've got to adamantly close the door. We've got to, you know, that's why when you open up the door to sexuality, all of a sudden you could have been good for years, but that porn leads you to having sex, and then all of a sudden you're on a 6-month bender. And so I don't think anyone should ever get so haughty to be like, it's good, I can just... The Bible says, who can hold coal in his lap and not get burned? You know, you can't control sin. Sin makes you its slave. So that's just some of my story about getting into it and getting out of it. There's so much more to come. I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to stop right there. But I know that I'm walking in freedom like I've never had before. But I'm also walking in wisdom like I've never had before of don't watch porn. Keep that door closed. You know, you could slip right back in so easily. So freedom is there. It's available. And stay tuned if this is something that's going to help you. Share it with people that you think it might help. This is just part of my story. It's obviously hard to fit a lot without talking at the speed of light into a short amount of time. But again, I will talk about what the Bible says, forgiving, overcoming trauma, a lot of that stuff. But God's gracious. And even in the teeter-tottering years, the heart of the Father was, my son, I want you free. God kept calling, kept beckoning me. He could see that I was struggling. He could see that I was like on this teeter-totter of, I want God, and then the pole of sin, and God, and the pole of sin. And he saw my frustration, but the demand for obedience, you know, there has to be the fruit of obedience when we come into the knowledge of God. So thank God he got me there, and by the grace of God, he'll keep me there. But that also requires a lot of discipline on my part. It requires a lot of boundaries. There's streets that even though I don't have same-sex desires, like I could see a man now, a beautiful man, and be like, this man obviously works out, he's beautiful. And because I'm not allowing sexuality into my life and the devil's voice, I don't sexualize that man. So I'm not suddenly blind, but I also don't go to places where I'm staring at naked people. Like I don't go sit in a bathhouse. I don't go sit in a gay bar. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, talking about the paths of the wicked, avoid it, do not pass it by. So yes, God's bringing us freedom, but there's some boundaries you got to have. There's paths that you don't even need to walk in. You know, God has called me to be a voice to set gay people free. People dealing with identity issues. And that's really what I'm going to dedicate the rest of March to. And a lot of my life, you know, is, you know, I realize that putting this out there could hamper my dreams in music, but those dreams pale in comparison to the idea that there's people you could snatch out of hell. So there's people that could be in eternity forever. So this is something I'm called to. I've known that for a long time, even while I was back in bondage. But it wasn't time to talk about getting out of bondage while, like, who wants to hear someone say, someone in chains be like, I'm going to talk to you about freedom. It's like, are you sure, bro? Are you sure? Because let's get free first. Or I'm going to talk to you about having a relationship with God. Well, first, have a relationship with God, right? So there's others of you that are called to this very same thing. But first, focus on your freedom and getting rid of your own chains and obedience to Christ and your own relationship with him. So let's close in prayer. Father, I pray that you soften the hearts of those that you've called to be your own. Amen. All right. Love you guys. I love you. I love you. If nobody else loves you, I love you. I love you. I love you.